Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the week that was on a fairly mild February Friday here in the Metro Detroit area. We are joined by a very illustrious group, some who are even packing their correspondence as we speak. Attorney Steve Fishman, multitasking in that role. How you doing, Steve?
Everything is wonderful.
We also have host of the Adolph Mongo Show on 9:10 a.m., Adolph Mongo.
Hello.
And we have from Deadline Detroit columnist Nancy Derringer.
Hey.
And editor-at-large and in chief, Alan Langle.
Editor-at-large, I like that.
That's hard. Very
It's especially poignant given that we so rarely leave our homes these days. But
True dat.
Yeah, true dat. Okay, carry on.
Okay, well, let's get going with something that's happening just a few blocks away, and that is trouble on the bridges here in Michigan with the spillover of the Canadian trucker protests. While these began as some kind of movement against vaccine mandates in Canada and were infiltrating the capital of Ottawa, it seems as though we're not immune from the effects of that with backups and closures on the Ambassador Bridge, as well as now spilling over to that tiny hamlet of Port Huron and the Blue Water Bridge over there as well. More disruptions are even being considered, including seeing this trucker movement being something that could perhaps disrupt the Super Bowl. And even coming to a state capital near you. What is going on with our docile neighbors?
This reminds me of the 70s when the truckers were protesting the high gas prices and stuff. I remember coming from Ann Arbor and couldn't move on 94 because they was blocking the lanes. It took them a while to get angry. I think we're going to see some more protests over here. The Canadians put a bug in everybody's ear. We can disrupt the bridge. We can stop the traffic. We can do some things. So people are going to have to listen to them. The government going to have to listen to them, and they're going to have to listen to these folks over here, whether it's a mask mandate or anything else they put on the table.
I think you're right that it's suddenly they have a card to play. It was like, when we went on strike, the papers were still able to publish. But when the auto workers go on strike, they shut down the plants. And here they're able to say, hey, you have to sit down and talk to us. But the interesting thing is the majority of truckers who are involved in this are vaccinated. There's a very high rate of vaccination there. And it's really more about, the New York Times just did a great piece on the trucking industry and the shortage and what a lousy job it is, how grueling it is, how these truckers have so many health issues. They're on the road for, 11, 12, 13 hours a day. It's a horrible job. And yet, so I think it goes way beyond. I think it's basically the truckers saying, give us some respect. We want some respect here.
Are you actually suggesting that the glamorous life of Smokey and the Bandit may not actually be there, Alan?
I'm sorry to say it's that. Yeah, I mean they talk about these truckers. It
was Convoy. Sorry, I don't want
to It was certainly that. Love the song. I think it came out around the same time as the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald.
Yeah, it did.
I mean, these truckers are driving around. They have a limit, I think, like 11 hours. They're supposed to be limited to like 11 hours at a time and then 10 hours of rest. They have to look for rest stops where they can maybe take a shower, use the bathroom. And a lot of times there's not even room to park their trucks. They have to park somewhere on a side road or something like that. It's really not a good job, but I think they're basically screaming, we want some respect for what we do. I mean, we realize how important it is. They're shutting down the economy. They are really, and not they're shutting it down, but they're getting there.
But that's the problem here because, like you said, it started out as like it was a anti-vaccine mandate protest. Now it's kind of morphed into we want better pay, we want better working conditions, we want more respect. it's hard to negotiate when the demands or the points of contention are so broad. It's just, I mean, what do you do? Okay, here's some respect. I mean,
Right.
you can talk about a vaccine mandate, but you can't really legislate or executive order respect and money. It's just
it's very poorly organized. I mean, in terms of the head. I mean, you've got
it's
people
also
out there now.
let's also put cards on the table. It's also heavily financed by right wingers south of the border, shall we say? So,
well, yeah. I mean, Trump flags stars and bars, because I don't believe that the Confederate flag is also the flag of British Columbia.
yeah.
But we see that around. Joining us, by the way, and bookending Adolf, who's now flanked by two attorneys, Mike Reti. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing good.
All right, so we're talking about the Canadian trucker protests. I wondered if you wanted to weigh in on that.
Well, the people in Canada are sick of being locked down, plain and simple. I know Canada better than anybody on this panel. Been going there since 1965. I spent almost my whole life over there. Got a lot of friends over there. They're tired of being locked down, plain and simple.
Are they locked down though?
Well, yeah. You ever gone into Windsor? Have you been to Windsor lately?
I have not been to Windsor.
There is not a soul on the street.
Really?
Well, what is there? I mean, what is the extent of the economic restrictions over there?
Well, first of all, the COVID rates are higher in Windsor than any other place in Canada, and one of the reasons is because it's probably they have a lot of transients that come through, i.e., the truck drivers.
Okay.
So that's a problem over there. But from a lot of the Canadians generally hate Justin Trudeau, okay, right or wrongly, okay, because he's basically shut their country down.
But
okay.
Explain, to be more specific. I mean, are restaurants closed? Are schools
Everything's closed. If there's nobody on the street, the place is shut down. Okay? You go to Ottawa, there's nobody on the street. You go to Toronto, there's nobody on the street. You go to Montreal, there's nobody on the street. You go to Calgary, there's nobody on the street. The entire country is shut down. And they're sick of it. And I'm not defending what these guys did to block an international border, but I'm just telling you what the mindset over there is.
Steve, here's a practical legal question. I mean, a driver's license or an operator's license is a privilege, not a right. Is it possible that with these kinds of disruptions, states could go ahead and start revoking or suspending driver's licenses of truckers?
I don't know. Rat and I usually handle cases a little bit more serious than that, so I don't pretend to be an expert on driver's licenses. But I agree with Adolf. I think this is a symptom of where we're going, and I don't think it's just going to be truckers and it's just going to be this or that. We've gotten to the point in this society where anybody that's got a gripe, it's like that movie, I forget the guy's name, remember, he's mad as hell, and he's not going to take it.
That would be
Network.
So I think this is a country in Canada. I'm listening to Rat. He knows about Canada. I haven't been there in years. I think that's just where we're at. And I think because nobody has a sense of community, Rat's talking about these guys are, clogging up the economy. They don't give a shit. They're mad and they're not going to take it anymore. Maybe they're justified. Maybe they're not.
Right.
But I think that we're going to see more and more of this. Whether it's the Super Bowl or whether it's just somebody decides they don't want you driving on 7 Mile. They're going to get on 7 Mile and block the road. I mean, that's where I see this thing is going. I don't see the specific business with the truckers, whether they're respected, whether they're not. This is just the society as it now exists. And there's not a whole hell of a lot that the police can do about it. There are children, from what I read in the article in the Times, there's kids in like 25% of these trucks. What are you going to do? Go shoot up the trucks and hit children? I mean, it's an impossible situation.
And these people are not anti-vaxxers. These truck drivers.
Right. Well, most of them have vaccines.
What they're tired. Basically, they're tired of being locked down. The people in Canada are tired. Okay, they're bars, restaurants. They've closed. People have lost their businesses. They've lost their livelihood. Families have been shattered. Because, I mean, you watch a hockey game that's in Canada, and there's not one person in the stands. Then you watch a game here at LCA, and it's packed to the gills.
Right.
So the bottom line is that the people in Canada, and it's not just the truck drivers, they're tired of being locked down. They want at least, and they see us opening up a little bit here in the States, and that's what they really want.
A little bit? The United States is open. I mean, and it's been open for months now.
Well, okay, all right. So, I mean, it's a matter of degrees, okay? I mean, we still have to wear masks. We still have to take precautions. But in Canada, you can't go anywhere. You can't go anywhere in Canada.
I'm just reading here a CBC story that says that Ontario opened restaurants to 50% capacity at the end of January.
Outdoors.
CBC News. It just says.
The Canadians are the new East Berliners. They're looking across over the wall and say, "Look at them! They're enjoying their freedom." Now we will tear down that wall. Tear it down. So what they're doing
I won't dispute that analogy. I mean,
so does that
the bottom line is that Canada has been, Trudeau has locked that country down. And that people are tired. And I'm not, listen, okay, do I think that they should blockade an international border? No. Okay. There's other ways to protest, I guess, but they certainly have got everybody's attention now, don't they?
I think you're going to see today. I think there's going to be they're going to court in Windsor. They're going to court. I think you're going to see first a warning. There's threats of major fines and arrests. I think tomorrow, if nothing happens, I think we're going to see. Who knows if it gets violent or what? But I think you're going to see a big force of police, and even possibly the governor of Michigan has offered not only tow trucks but offered security as well. I think we're going to see a conference.
Have you noticed that the protesters, they're abiding by the law? They're on public property where you're supposed to protest. They haven't been throwing bottles and Molotov cocktails at anybody. They've been very polite. Right. Their protests have been, what's the word I'm looking for? They haven't been violent. They're just peaceful. Thank you. Peaceful. Right. And that, that's the Canadian way, to be honest with you.
So I don't know how much tow trucks might work, because I was reading a report about how I think it was someplace out west in Canada. They send out tow trucks who then refused to go ahead and move the trucks, and in fact then joined the protest. The Global News in Canada has taken a poll saying that 46% of Canadians are sympathetic to the truckers' protests, but they disapprove of the tactics. Right. So I guess it's still a fluid situation. But Adolf, this whole idea about Canada becoming East Berlin, does that mean that the Ambassador Bridge is Checkpoint Matty?
Well, whatever. The Ambassador Bridge, as the Gordie Howe Bridge was open, it'll be the Checkpoint Gordie too. The bottom line is the Canadians are looking at the U.S. and you're right. The hockey games are filled, basketball arenas, people going to restaurants, et cetera, et cetera. And here I am. It's like living in the backyard, and I'm looking over at my neighbors. They're barbecuing every day, and they're enjoying life, and I'm on lockdown over in this yard. Can't get out. Or no one can come in. You had almost 2 years people couldn't see their wives, husbands, relatives, etc., unless you was an emergency worker or whatever. Yeah, they mad as hell, and they're gonna bring down the Trudeau government. That's what it's all about. He's gonna be toast in, I don't know, 6-7 months, because he's gonna get a vote of no confidence because he can't survive this.
He won't survive it. They hate him over there. My wife's Canadian. You talk to her family members. I got a lot of buddies that I played hockey with over the years that are over there. Talk to them. They hate him. They absolutely hate him.
Well, I think if the Conservative Party over there could get its act together, then they might be able to launch a stronger opposition. But it seems as though they're having trouble mobilizing. still a very fluid situation. But speaking about the governor here and also COVID in general, it looks like numbers are coming down, despite the fact that we've crossed the 900,000 death figure recently. And at the same time, now we're seeing both at the local level and also at the national level movements away from mask mandates. Delaware, for example, just announced that it is moving away from that. And then we also have here in Michigan, Ingham County, and now following it is Oakland County. So there is a domino effect of this. It looks like Omicron beat the pants off Delta, a milder form of the virus. And there's you guys need to start putting together political cartoons in Deadline Detroit. That would be a really cool one to have, Omicron versus Delta. It's like Spy versus Spy from Mad Magazine. But as these numbers are coming down, how do you think that's going to affect these protests? Do you think that it's going to intensify them for people saying, why do we still need them? And like the discussion going on in Great Britain right now, is it maybe premature to start to take the training wheels off the bike?
We've been discussing this for months on this show, and I say the same thing I said all along. I don't know that mandates do anything other than get people pissed off. Everybody can do whatever they want. You want to wear a mask for the rest of your life, you can. I mean, Lengo's a big mask one. Nancy is, unless she's flying to Europe with her husband for a vacation. But then, of course, it's okay, which, by the way, is not unusual. That kind of what some might call hypocrisy and some might just call living life is pretty common. I've got a ton of friends of mine who do the same thing. They're all mask, and the next thing you know, they decide they want to go to dinner. There's 500 people sitting on top of each other. I think that I agree again with what Adolf was. I can't believe I'm agreeing with Adolf. We usually argue and fight. Even though he's from Oak Park, I'm still agreeing with him. But I think that people, the ones who aren't going to do shit, they're not going to do shit no matter what.
That's
and
right.
It comes down to, like what Rat was saying about over there, you just get sick of people telling you what you could and couldn't do. I wear a mask when I go in a grocery store, not because I'm worried, because I'm not, but just in case I don't want some old cocker, who's infirm to get sick. But you can't force people to do stuff until you're going to wind up with just what you got now. First it'll be the truckers, then it'll be, I don't know, the over 70 crowd will all be there in their wheelchairs blocking your entrance to Costco. I mean, I think that
it was like when they made it mandatory to have a seatbelt on, and you had people saying, I don't want to wear a seatbelt, and listen, it took people flying through windows, dying before people got the message, I'll wear a seatbelt, but you still have, and I talk to a lot of cops I know that go to traffic accidents, and they say you still got people that won't wear a seatbelt, and they laying out there in the middle of the street dead. The helmets, they don't want to wear them riding a motorcycle. If the bike flips over, dead. So that's a choice that people are gonna make. And people don't want to wear masks. I call them the Fauci people that want to wear masks. Alan Fauci, Nancy Fauci. I know a whole lot of Faucis. That's fine. They're gonna promote that, and they have a right to do it. But I also have a right not to be around folks that don't that not vaccinated, that don't want to wear a mask, that want to get up in my face. I'm not gonna sit at a restaurant, and I think recently me and my wife went to some restaurants, and they wanted to seat us. She said, nope, don't want to sit there, because you don't want to be hugged in between all these people. You can just go home.
Adolph's married to a Fauci.
Yes.
What this comes down to, though, what it ends up being about is like the utter lack of like any kind of consensus and trust in medical authorities. I mean, I'm kind of halfway between, say, Fishman and Lengel. I mean, I'm still being cautious. I'm like Adolph's wife. I walk into a place, I don't like the look of it, I walk out. But at the same time, I also think, and I think back to Europe and actually Canada for that matter, if more people had gotten on board the vaccine train, at the beginning and not dug in their heels and said, nah, you can't make me, I think we'd be in a much better position here. I mean, these vaccines are safe, and yet it doesn't, every time I turn on or look at a Gross Point Facebook page, I see some, natural foods, essential oils, mommy, claiming that she knows 10 people who have died from the vaccine, which is nonsense. But
can we kill them all? Can we? Can we just have a purge?
I mean, I'm triple vaccinated. I've had a number of close calls with people who tested positive who did not infect me, and I've reached a point of peace. Crowded, steamy, tight restaurants, no. But one where I've got a little bit of breathing room and you can swing a cat and not hit somebody, yes, I'm fine with that. So
are you saying, Nancy, that moving forward, that this is just going to be a cultural shift, and that this country is just going to have these two kinds of people?
Yes, exactly. I mean, I wrote a story. My last job, this would have been like 2012. I wrote a story about one of these up north, clodhoppers who wanted to do away with vaccine requirements for healthcare workers. And this was back when it was about flu shots. And, these are hospitals and health systems that wanted to require anybody who worked there to get an annual flu shot. The flu shot it's nothing. But he wanted to do away with that. He wanted to prevent them from requiring that. And I asked him, I said, what is your complaint about vaccines? And he said, I just don't like the words required to, and that's the kind of thinking that we're talking about here. It's like, you can't make me.
But how stupid is that?
It's really stupid.
We had to get shots to go to school. Your kids had to get shots to go to school.
This is what term limits have given us, though. I mean,
but we have had these arguments before. We have had the polio shot. People didn't want to take the vaccine, the smallpox, rabies. People fought against getting any kind of protection. Yeah. And yet we got rid of the smallpox. We can treat rabies, and we got rid of polio. There's people that wouldn't take. You can look at old headlines in the papers where, especially in the Black community in the 50s, they was weary about getting a polio shot until it just wreaked havoc in the Black community. People didn't want to take the shot, and they the same arguments. Oh, they just found this cure all of a sudden. It only took a month or 2 months. Right. So we hear the same thing. People dying on their deathbed saying they don't have COVID. Right. They still singing praises to Donald Trump. He was right. And then they take their last breath.
Well, think about the healthcare workers.
Herman Cain took one for the team. Where is he at now? Gone. Because they just pretended that this thing is fake, and it's not fake. So if they don't want to take the shot, they want to continue to say it's not real. Let them go. Yeah. Let them do their thing. But there should be a mandate that kids can't go to school. You can't get on an airplane. It should be some rules and regulations. But if you don't want to take it, you can't fly. You can't send your kid to school, etc.
Right.
Okay, I'm getting triggered by no-fly lists, but anyway, it's just me. Well, we've got these dichotomies that are now just simply commonplace in this country, and I think one of the recent ones, of course, is the Republican National Committee with its censure resolution. Particularly going after Wyoming Congresswoman Liz Cheney and Illinois Congressman Adam Kinzinger, both who happen to be on the January 6th Congressional Committee looking into what happened at the Capitol, and having the censure resolution calling it, legitimate
political discourse.
Political discourse as opposed to violent insurrection. And there seems to be a cleavage even among the Republican leadership on Capitol Hill, where Minority Leader Mitch McConnell says, well, it was it was definitely a violent insurrection. And that's my best turtle impersonation.
Okay.
And then we have House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy saying, well, no, actually, it was a violent insurrection when you asked the people who were subpoenaed to appear before the committee. So trying to parse who is really involved in this. But it seems as though people are heading for the exits in the Republican Party or the caucus. Is this going to affect the midterms if they walk away claiming that this was just legitimate discourse?
You know, I think one of the interesting things going on right now is that Donald Trump cannot let go of 2020, and the Republicans are trying to remind everyone else, let's move forward, let's think forward. And like he did in Georgia, he undermined the Senate race there. Miraculously, the Democrats won both seats, and you wonder how much they're going to be able to mute him as the things move forward this year.
So, Mike, you were talking about in Canada that people are fed up. It seems as though, just looking at media reports, that there are a lot of Americans, particularly on the left side of the aisle, that are frustrated that the wheels of justice aren't moving faster. They're pretty sure, they're pretty indignant that there's stuff on Trump and there's stuff on other people, maybe Jim Jordan, Steve Bannon, Josh Hawley, any number of Republicans, and yet there are no indictments coming down yet. I mean, are we moving toward that same kind of frustration here?
Well, you mean that they're not going to be indicted? I mean, I don't know what Merrick Garland's got going inside the Justice Department, but I'm assuming that he's got some kind of investigations going. You know, they indicted those Oath Keepers. I'm sure that part of the calculus in that was that maybe they can get someone to flip and get closer and closer to Trump. Who knows? But I think the noose is slowly tightening around their necks. Just to wait and see.
So, Steve, I mean, you also operate on a judicial calendar and on a docket, and things have their own paces. Are we as a nation just becoming that impatient when it comes to this idea of the legal process?
I think that's true. I think what Rat just said is, I've said this before on this show. You know, everybody thinks that it's like there's a stick up and you have a video of it so you can arrest the guy the next day and take him to trial in 2 weeks. What you have to do here is just what Mike was saying. You're going to get guys, you hope they'll flip. And I'm certain that some people are flipping. And I will say again, what I've said many times before, the Georgia case is the lock of the year. That's the case because you got him talking out of his own voice. And Rat and I sure know there's nothing less fun for the criminal defense lawyer than to try to explain why what they heard isn't really what they heard to the judge. Okay. So
is that you?
Ireland, you guys got to understand, other than maybe Ramsey Clark many years ago, the attorney generals come from the same womb that comes to the people on the Supreme Court. These are these guys from Harvard Law and the University of whatever, and they move at a slow pace. They don't sense the streets. They have no knowledge of the streets.
Right.
No. I mean, when you see a Supreme Court like this where only one justice out of 9 was ever even a trial judge, and you expect these people to have any conception of what's going on in a trial court, let alone what's going on in the streets. And when I say the streets, I don't just mean out in the streets somewhere where everybody's going out sticking people up. I'm talking about the people in the country. And they don't recognize because they're never around people like that. They're only around each other. And I think a guy like Merrick Garland is Exhibit A. Hopefully, as Mike Ratai says, hopefully it'll turn into something. But if I had to bet money, I might bet 50 cents. But I wouldn't bet a whole hell of a lot more. I'm waiting on Georgia. That's where they're going to get him, and he's going to get convicted. I'm telling you.
So Adolf, I mean, Steve's got Georgia on his mind, but I mean, you
Georgia.
I was waiting for that. But you've got the pulse of the street with your radio show. What are listeners telling you? I mean, is there that sense of impatience? Do they even care, or is this just something that media types like to splash around and indulge themselves with?
No, well, people care, but you know, people care about the voting rights. They care about making more money. They pissed off at Biden because Biden moving kind of slow. I mean, at a snail's pace. They pissed off. But at the same time, it's business as usual. Anytime you got a congresswoman that represent Black Detroiters, and her main agenda is Palestine, and the only thing that she offered one of the poorest districts in the country, we're going to name a dilapidated post office after Rosa Parks. Well, we got some issues, and yet she remained popular with those same folks that vote. Most people that don't want to vote. You got 15, 20% at the most that'll go out and vote. So this is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with people that have got to the point where no matter what I do, nothing's going to happen. Crime is still out of control in the city. Services are still bad, and nothing has changed except for the few who's enjoying a great revival in downtown Detroit, and a little bit on the outskirts of the neighborhood.
You can't get lunch down here during the week, man. Okay, so
well, you can't buy groceries in a neighborhood. You got to go to a gas station.
I hear you, brother.
And you can't even. You see people out there trying to catch a bus. It's 2 below zero, and the bus sometimes stop, sometimes don't. It's an hour, 2. Listen, man. If city workers and the city council people had to catch a bus, they'll find out that they'll change the way they operate DOT, but they don't, and they don't care.
So I got a question for you, Adolph, on that. Brenda Lawrence just endorsed Haley Stevens, which obviously means endorsing her over Andy Levin.
Payback is a motherfucker. So his daddy didn't endorse her when she ran. He endorsed Rudy Hobbs, so she's paying him back. But I don't think she got any coattails. She was another do nothing. She was there and did nothing. What did she do? Can you name 5 things that Brenda Lawrence was going to be known for? What is her legacy? This is what we're looking at. So she's telling people, okay, I'm endorsing Haley Stevens. Okay, that's fine. But who's going to go vote for her because of Brenda Lawrence? People are saying to me, why didn't Brenda Lawrence jump in that seat? That's part of her district. Or why didn't she go to the new 12th?
Right.
That's more than part of her district. Right. What kind of deals did she make to get out of those races?
Well, all I know is that she doesn't confuse gazpacho with Gestapo. So, we've got a much better delegation out of Michigan than they do out of Georgia. So
well, it may be, but you know what? But when they do nothing, this is not they're not the first. We had Congress people that just retired on the job in these seats and stuff. And the bottom line is we got to have somebody that's going to carry out the agenda of this district. That's jobs, deal with crime, etc. How many buildings, dilapidated buildings, we going to name after Rosa Parks, who was a great lady? I knew Rosa Parks, but the bus center downtown, they named that after her, and they don't. And if you go look at it, they unlocked it because of the homeless people took over. Now you're going to name a post office after her? Probably closed. Listen, they got to do something that's different, and hopefully we'll get somebody in there that's going to make some changes. How many people tired of hearing Mike Duggan talking about, oh, we got 200 jobs, they're going to make $15 an hour. So what? How you going to deal with the crime? We got kids shooting each other up every day. He hasn't said not one word. He's my smuck of the week because he hasn't said anything. He's invisible.
It's interesting with the $15 an hour thing that Letitia Johnson, the new council member, is, Duggan basically handed over this bill for her to make sure that every employee in the city is making $15 an hour, and Duggan's for it. But interestingly, pre-pandemic, Duggan probably would not have been for. But if you drive down Woodward, like Woodward and West Grand Boulevard or Baltimore, at the White Castle, there's a sign that says $15 an hour. So $15 an hour is like, if you want to keep any workers, you have to go up to $15 an hour now. It's not really a great, they're trying to make it seem like this is some great big deal, but it's kind of a bullshit little.
Well, and in the burbs, they're advertising for $20 an hour at a lot of fast food places.
Yeah.
So, well, shout out to Dolly Parton, because she announced that any employee at Dollywood, whether part-time or full-time, will have their higher education paid for by Miss Parton. So there you go.
She's a saint, Saint Dolly. It's like she really needs to be like, she'll be immortalized in bronze someday.
So we need a fatwa from you, Alan. Would that make her a menshita or a womensch?
I have to think about that one. I like it.
Okay. Just I need to bolster my Yiddish, so that would help. Well, there's obviously something about Michigan's elections that draws the attention of people further afield. News comes that none other than leaking hair dye man, Rudy Giuliani, was seeking to gain access through the prosecutor of the Antrim County voting machines. What is up with Rudy G and the machines?
They were trying to overthrow the election. This is another like simple answer to a needlessly complex question.
Right.
I mean, this was part, and the more we learn, the more memos trickle out about this, the more emails. We're learning that this was a coordinated, pre-planned effort to, snatch victory from the jaws of defeat on the part of the Trump administration. And unfortunately, some people are still dumb enough to believe that it was justified.
Well, we're talking about voting, or we're going to talk about, when we talk about voting fraud, I mean, who is perpetrating voting fraud for the 2020 election rather than the Republicans? I mean, it's insane. I mean, it's treason. If you unravel and what the January 6th committee has found and other information that's come out, we have really just a total act of treason here.
Yep.
They should all be shot. I mean, is there any? They should all be put along the wall and shot. Okay.
Amen.
Is anyone keeping tabs of this list that keeps growing of people that Mike wants outed? Meaning out, I should say.
We need to have a purge. I keep telling you all that. Okay.
I know, mate, but you keep adding to the purge. I mean, I'm getting writer's cramp.
We still need some service workers left when it's all done, Mike. Come on.
You guys have no idea. You have to try a long case with Rat. The list of targets, the list of people who are either going to get their asses beat or there's no pistols around because we're in court, right? I mean, you got to spend a few months with him in a trial. I mean, there's a very long list. You have to take a lot of his hockey buddies and some of my basketball buddies to take care of all these people.
But it's interesting, like Marjorie Taylor Greene. It's almost as if the D students from high school have somehow figured out how to rise to the top here, and we're just being dictated by people like that who are very marginal.
They're dangerous.
And intelligent. Yeah, they're dangerous.
They're dangerous. We got Republicans now saying get rid of the 17th Amendment and let the states elect out instead of electing senators by a popular vote. They want to go back to the good old days
where they appointed.
Yeah. So these people are dangerous. They have an agenda. The Democrats don't have an agenda. They got nothing. Nothing. Republicans got an agenda. Their agenda is to overthrow the government and install a dictator for life and control the Supreme Court, the appeals court, and every other court.
Well, it's all about white power, clinging on to white power. That's what it's all about. Nothing more, nothing less. It's all about white power.
So, Mike, the demographics of this country are changing by the day, and it's estimated that in another 18 years, America is going to become a majority minority country.
Right.
So it seems as though I mean, not to sound too pessimistic, but from what you're saying, this is probably going to intensify.
South Africa in the making. South Africa in the making. Apartheid in the making.
That's right.
Because they baking it. They baking the cake. Where the minority controls the majority. If that's the case, I'm telling you, you got these people. They have an agenda. I mean, and they all in lockstep. They even got the Negroes that's in power with the GOP in lockstep with them. The Tim Scotts of the world. Unbelievable. Same way when the first organized police department in the U.S. in New Orleans was made up of who? Slave catchers, and the majority of them was black folks catching other black folks. If we don't get a handle on dealing with the Trumps and Marjorie Taylor Greens and all these crazies, 5-10 years from now, they're really going to control the government.
Well, speaking of Trump, it seems as though among his many egregious transgressions, messing up the plumbing at the White House might have been one as well. Now comes news that apparently, along with his penchant for tearing up documents after he would get done reading it, kind of the burn after reading axiom, allegations that he was also flushing documents down the gold-plated toilet that he had installed, I believe, at the White House.
He never had a gold-plated toilet installed, but I get you. Go ahead.
But the fact is that New York Times reporter Maggie Haberman is got a book coming out, I believe, in October with some fairly deep source material. Along with the fact that the National Archives is now calling for an investigation through the Department of Justice, that many documents which were not intended to go to Mar-a-Lago, former President Trump, absconded with them, including a letter that he received from outgoing President Obama, and also correspondence from Kim Jong-un, which he thought he was entitled to keep. But a lot of classified documents also seem to have found their way into Mar-a-Lago. Is this going to be the equivalent of the 18 minutes of dead air tape in the Watergate correspondence?
Well, don't forget how he accused Hillary Clinton in the emails. I mean, during the debates. I mean,
right.
Look, I mean, it's just like Nancy was alluding to earlier. Just more and more hypocrisy, more and more bullshit, coming out of this asshole's mouth. Okay, and his actions. Okay.
By the way, Mike, it is now okay to use that as a verb. Alan has already.
It's more the same. I mean, it's just
I feel honestly, I feel like the country is so exhausted by this, and I think I've also said this on this show before. If I could turn back time, to a limited degree, I would tell people, Kellyanne Conway sitting on the Oval Office couch with her shoes off is not the scandal of the season. It's like, keep your powder dry for when the real bad shit begins to pop off. I honestly believe, there are people who probably, first of all, don't see anything wrong with taking these things out. They don't see anything wrong with, flushing sensitive documents down the toilet. It's just more outrage fatigue. Well, do I think it's going to be like the 18-minute gap? No.
The country is where we were, it's in a sense, in the 1850s, okay? I mean, it doesn't matter what Trump does or what any of these assholes do. Right. You've got a whole swath of Americans that, as Nancy just said,
they don't care.
They don't care.
Right.
Okay? The problem is, like when you read the papers from the 1850s, during the Lincoln-Douglas debates, the supporters of Douglas thought that the guy carried the day and Lincoln was a, bumbling idiot. Then you read the papers that supported the Republican Party and Douglas was a midget and this, that, and a retard. And, and Lincoln was carried off on everybody's shoulders. I mean, so that's where we're at right now. And so I'm telling you, we're heading for a civil war. I pray we are.
I think that what you guys are saying has already been shown. Mark Meadows went on Newsmax, that bastion of America, right?
Integrity.
And what did he say? He compared this. I was going to make him schmuck of the week, but there's so much competition.
That was my schmuck of the week.
He compared Trump flushing all this stuff, ripping stuff up, to Nancy Pelosi ripping up Trump's address, State of the Union address.
Right.
He's giving it on television to everybody. He actually compared those things.
Yeah.
So already what Rap's saying, what everybody seems to be saying is, it doesn't matter what happens. It doesn't matter what he does or what comes out. They make excuses for it. And the whole right-wing media supports it. And Fox News tells you what happened, and Newsmax and this and that and the other. So,
well, the thing is, when you talk about the 18 minutes, the 18 minutes meant something back then when people gave a shit about, Watergate right now with Trump. If Trump had been accused in the whole Watergate scandal, there's no way in hell the Republicans would have told him to leave. They would have protected him.
But you know what the difference is now, in my opinion, is that in the 70s, you had 3 news stations. You got real news.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Now you got social media. You got Facebook, the bullshit that they put on Facebook. You got state-run television like Fox News and OAN, that DirecTV just got rid of, thank God. And the other one Steve was talking about, Newsmax. So, do you think that people that follow Trump and his band of idiots watch MSNBC or read the New York Times or the New York Post or the Washington Post? Hey, listen to Sean Hannity and that fucking idiot Tucker Carlson. Okay? So, I mean, there's your problem right there.
You know what I find interesting about OAN and Newsmax and all that is it looks like they hire attractive young women straight out of Hillsdale College or, some other place. I mean, and they have no broadcast skills. I mean, they stumble, they vocal fry like Melissa Carone. They've got this strange delivery. It looks like they've never really seen like a decent coach. I have the idea that these places operate on a real shoestring, that this money is probably pouring in from all these cable systems and advertising. But the people who are actually like sitting behind the switchers and doing the makeup and everything else are just like probably being paid like, starvation wages.
But that's natural, Nancy. I mean, they can speak to the every person.
Well, I'll be the first to say that sometimes network and even large market local news can be a little too slick. And I do have a fondness for, small market TV, because you see things on small market TV you would never see in a place like Detroit. Like, for instance, a anchor talking about the Cannes Film Festival, which I saw. It just cracked me up. But anyway. Okay, go on.
Of course, we know it's actually Canis.
Canis.
And by the way, for our audience out there, lest you think that this is a taped, delayed show or that we are all robots, let me give you some breaking news about something that we were talking about earlier. Canada has now declared a state of emergency regarding the truck protests, and protesters could be incarcerated for up to 1 year in jail. Or $100,000 as a fine. I think that's Canadian money, but that's still more than I've got. But anything that is regarded to be an illegal blockade of crucial infrastructure is going to then make people culpable, according to Ontario Premier Doug Ford.
All right.
There we go. The news is happening around us.
You're supposed to go, I've just been handed a bulletin, and then shake a piece of paper in your hand.
Oh, Walter Cronkite.
But with all due respect to Alan and Deadline Detroit, I think our budget may be less than OAN, so I have no one to hand me a bulletin.
We're going to get there, damn it.
We are. But we've got some local news as well when it comes down to who knew what and when. And that, of course, is an update of the Oxford shooting case, and particularly the Crumbley Parents. In court, there was an array of witnesses that came forward, including the former employer of Mrs. Crumbley. And hearing stories about her ranting about her affair, in that was also her anxiety about her son and the fact that she then conceded to a friend that he, in fact, actually not a friend, wasn't it somebody taking care of their horses?
A state. Well, they became a friend.
Okay.
Yeah.
They became friends.
About that, it looks like he did it. Along with the fact that apparently they're not allowed to say "I love you" to each other in the courtroom, it is now starting to delineate a portrait of these individuals, their character, their personalities, and their state of mind. I guess the question I've got is that the worse they look, could this in some way help their son? Especially if he's launching an insanity defense?
That's a good one.
We'll leave the lawyers. We'll let the lawyers.
Yeah, the lawyers can handle this one.
Yeah, well, I just want Mike to add to his purge list, so
I'll defer to Steve on this one. Because I've had some conversations with some lawyers that Steve knows, experienced lawyers like Steve that have been around for a long time that don't even think that the Crumbley parents should be prosecuted. So I'll defer to Mr. Fishman on this for a minute.
Okay, so here's the way I look at it. Number one, the answer to your question, it doesn't have any effect at all on the kid's case. It makes absolutely no difference. The kid's lawyer is employing the defense of last resort, that being insanity, which is almost impossible to win on these days. I haven't had an insanity case in, 40 years, something like that. Aside from that, there are a couple things that I don't think people have really talked about. The first thing is that, and I'm sure Michael will agree with me 100%, it is impossible, and I repeat it, impossible for this judge to have allowed the same law firm to represent the husband and the wife.
That's right.
There's not a federal judge on the planet that will allow it, and there's not a judge who takes his or her job seriously that would allow it. To ask two basically uneducated people, do you realize there could be a conflict? Yeah. Do you waive it? Yeah. They call that a waiver. What they're doing is they're building in the possibility of an appeal, particularly on behalf of the husband. I'll get to that in another second. From what I read, and I don't watch television, so I didn't see anything, but I did read Teresa Baldus's pretty thorough articles of what came out. Unbelievably to me, the testimony of all those people you were just referring to all have to do with statements made by the wife, right? And from what I could see or what I've heard, there was not one objection from the husband's lawyer, which is not surprising since it's the same law firm, as to, I'm sorry, none of this applies to me. It's hearsay to me. They're not charged with conspiracy. There's no conspiracy aspect to it. And that is all objectionable. Every single word that came out of those witnesses' mouths about what the wife said was only admissible as to the wife. Never heard an objection. Could it be because they both work at the same firm? If Rat and I were trying that case, I guarantee you, if he's representing the husband, the first hearsay statement that came out of the first witness's mouth, Rat would have jumped up. Excuse me, Judge, all that's well and good, but none of it applies to me. And any real judge would say, you're absolutely right, Mr. Rat. I thank you very much.
Right. And
So that's an interesting.
Hold on. Go ahead. Let him finish because I got to follow up on this because this is he's getting into a point that I made and got into trouble with one of the defense lawyers that sent me a nasty email. Of course, I ignored her. But go.
You put her on the list. She's on the list.
She's incompetent, but that's another story. Go ahead.
So, and with respect to whether they should have been charged or not, and I think I've said this on this show before. I support the fact that she charged them. Whether they're convicted or not is going to be a question for the citizens of Oakland County, okay? The reason I support the fact that she charged them is that this stuff has been happening for years and years and years all across the country. No elected official anywhere, particularly in our Congress, wants to do anything about guns, okay? So if we know for sure that no legislature, state or federal, is going to do anything about guns, at the very least, I think it's the right thing to do to charge parents with involuntary manslaughter, not that they did the shooting or that they killed the person, but because of the fact that they did the things that they did. It'll be interesting to see what a jury is going to do about it. So while you can make a technical legal argument, and I think both Rat and I would have a decent chance if we represented the two Crumbley parents, we'd have a decent chance of acquittal. But I think she's right to do it because somehow, some way, we've got to have somebody answer for this business with guns being everywhere. And a 15-year-old has a gun bought for him and then they go to the shooting range, and then they go see the counselors at the school, and they don't say one word about it. That I think.
I think also
I have a problem with that. I agree that we need to do something, but once you start doing that, overzealous prosecutors gonna come right into the inner city and start charging a single mother with her son and went out there. She has no control over what he done, and she gonna be sitting up there in court right along with him. You know, we got
that was part of the debate that I had with some of these other lawyers that I was alluding to earlier. But the difference from what you're talking about, Adolf, and what happened in this case is they bought the kid the gun. They knew he had mental problems. And it seems to me that when they come into court, they're more interested in saying I love you to each other and all this other shit and seeing each other, as opposed to showing some kind of remorse, which to me goes to the way that the lawyers have prepped their clients how to behave in court. But, you know, like Steve pointed out, there's a lot of facts here that suggest that these parents put in motion the situation that ended up where all these kids got killed and shot.
Well, there's no question about it. But the bottom line, you got a prosecutor in Wayne County. Hey, listen, I wouldn't be surprised Kim Worthy she's unpredictable about what she would do. I'm just voicing some concern that they're going to take this little mother on the east side and she's going to be sitting down there in court. I'm going to tell you.
No question. That's certainly a concern.
I watched the hearing through most of the day. I mean, one of the things you got a sense was that the parents, they had things to do. Like they got called to their kid's school and they were like, oh God, this is such an inconvenience. Oh, and like, I just want to get out of here. No, keep them in school. But the sympathetic thing, when you listen to the audio of the 911 call of the father running home and hearing that there'd been a shooting, running home to see if the gun was missing, and it is missing. And he calls up frantically 911 saying, hey, I think it's my son. He goes to the high school. We need to get an officer over here. I mean, you get a sense. I think that's sort of a sympathetic part of the case for the defense. But
that goes to what Steve was talking about. I mean, this goes to the conflict issue.
Right. I was going to say,
and I said it on another podcast that these lawyers are way over their head. Okay. And of course I got criticized for it, but I stand by it. Now, Mr. Fishman, okay, just supported everything that I've been saying. Okay. There's a conflict here. Yeah. A huge conflict.
Yep.
I agree.
Yep. Amen.
Well, with that, we are now at that point of the show where some people may make Mike's purge list. We go to...
And now, it's time for Deadline Detroit's nominees for Schmuck of the Week.
All right, Mike, just because I know you're jonesing for somebody to hit that list.
Well, you know, you guys, I always want to do Trump, and I guess we can't do Trump all the time, right?
No,
he is the schmuck.
It's what he's named for.
I mean, you know, my Schmuck of the Week, I mean, it's got to be the Republican party, you know, the RNC, with this bullshit thing that they came out with this week about the January 6th being a legitimate political discourse. I mean, what a freaking disgrace. And for those people that sat in that room and raised their right hands and adopted that resolution, or whatever you want to call it, they all should be lined up against the wall and summarily executed. So those are my
right.
Adding to the list. Adolf.
Anti for president.
My schmuck of the week or the year or whatever is the city of Detroit, the Detroit Fire Department, the Detroit Police Department. Last year, a young lady called EMS because her male friend had a heart attack. Fire and EMT came. She called his son. He was dead at the scene. The son came. He upset, blamed her. He started choking her and stabbing her. And those 6 men did nothing. They stood and let this woman die. They
called
stabbed her.
911.
Yeah, they dialed 911. He walked out of there right past them with blood on his hands, walked right past the police when they pulled up, and there it is. These cowards, these piece of shit was defended by the Eric Jones and I blame Mike Duggan. The buck stops at his desk. That they let this woman die. So it's policy. We don't help. We call the police. If that was your daughter, if that was your cousin, that was your neighbor, 6 grown men, they let this one asshole choke this woman to death and stab her, and they watched. They watched it happen.
That's
right.
Yep.
Amen.
Nancy.
You know how every so often we have somebody on the show says, I really hate to call somebody a schmuck because I just want to give him a little positive pat on the back and just try to keep things upbeat. I'm going to do that this week, and I'm giving my non-schmuck of the week to Marjorie Taylor Greene for giving the entire country, for uniting our divided land in hilarity over her malaprop, confusing, of course, Gestapo and Gazpacho.
By the way,
shows you how ignorant she is.
One of the English papers interviewed Larry Thomas, the soup Nazi, about that, and he said, "I can't believe someone born in the 20th century would not know the difference between Gestapo and Gazpacho." He said, "You can't make this shit up."
That's like her eulogizing the passing of that great actress Mulligatawny Catane.
Yeah.
Mulligatawny. Wow. But Nancy, I mean, hearing you do that, all I can think of now is Lamb Chop and Sherry Lewis.
I'm a good mimic, so I do that.
Yeah. By the way, I know most of these references probably will not resonate with anyone past Gen X, but hey, you can always look it up. Steve.
Well, I was going to have Mark Meadows, but we discussed Mark Meadows already before. And instead, I'm going to go to the flip side of, although I agree with Nance, that did provide a lot of humor, but somehow Marjorie Taylor Greene always manages to get pretty high on the list. And this time I had to pick her. The confusion, no, that's being too polite. The ignorance that caused her to say the Gazpacho police instead of the Gestapo police. I was waiting for her to say that they're, and not only that, but they were throwing matzo ball cocktails. So Marjorie Taylor Greene, yet again, I really would love to make her do. She should have to spend 2 hours with Lengel and I so we can school her on English and Yiddish. So matzo ball cocktails and Gestapo police, you won it again.
While making her volunteer at a soup kitchen.
Yeah, and don't forget mask mandates are equivalent to the Holocaust. That one too.
Right.
There you go. Alan.
I'm going to go with, I had all these other ones, but Rona Romney McDaniel, who dropped her name, first of all, because Trump asked her to, because he didn't like Romney. But she wrote an opinion piece, I think it was called Town Hall or something, one of the conservative papers, saying how ridiculous January 6th is and that it's a mockery because they weren't allowed to put, people like Jim Jordan on that committee, who Jim Jordan would have done nothing but, first of all, he couldn't have been trusted for what they were doing. If they were planning subpoenas or whatever, he would have leaked everything. He would have tried to sabotage the whole committee. And she's defending the whole thing that, it's just, she's really a disgrace. That woman, I've heard she's a nice person, but she has really sold her soul to that party in such an ugly way.
She has.
Well, it's a freaking cult, man.
It is.
It's not a political party. It's a cult. It's turned into a cult.
And she, early on after the election, I was told by somebody who knows that she thought the whole Trump thing about the election being stolen was bullshit. But yet she wants her job more than she cares about the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Or the country.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Shocked, I'm telling you. Well, speaking of feigned outrage, my schmuck of the week is NBC commentator Todd Richards, who last night was announcing the half-pipe snowboarding competition.
Oh.
And upon a truly amazing performance by Japanese snowboarder Ayumu Hiranu. Richards was totally convinced, and I think I agree with him, that Hiranu, by and large, had the best snowboarding run ever. And yet he was, in his second run, given a second position score. Richards, who apparently is a former snowboarder of some sort, went into a full outrage and said, "What's wrong with the judges? This is a travesty." But failed to mention that the egregiously low score was provided by an American judge.
Yep.
Suspiciously, because Shaun White was having his swan song at the Olympics this year. And it makes you wonder if there is this corruption in judging. Perhaps when we point our finger, do we have three pointing back at us? So, Todd Richards, you're my schmuck of the week. So
That's a good one.
No,
Yeah.
I was watching that last night and I couldn't believe it because that Japanese kid was like, I mean, the kid was flying, man. I mean, and then they gave the Australian kid a better score. It was
Which, by the way, there's no snow. There's no snow in Australia, but at least Justice won out in his third run. Hiranu just killed it even further, and the judges begrudgingly had to acknowledge that. So Hiranu won, but Todd Richards, you're nowhere near the podium. So for the week.
Did you see how high that kid got? Did you see how high he got up off
24 feet, they said.
I just want to know how high people got watching him get that high, because if you know anything about snowboard culture,
I would kill myself just trying to get on it.
Anytime you leave things to referee, that's why we played hockey and basketball. At the end of the day, it's the score. Ain't no refs telling you who won.
Exactly.
Well, a few years ago, I got to ski out in Utah, and Deer Valley doesn't allow snowboarders because I think they don't want the culture. But you go next door to Park City, where it is allowed, and there is just a constant cloud of ganja over there, especially when you get into the higher elevations. So a tale of two mounds, if you will. Well, anyways, thank you again for a wonderful episode of The Week That Was. Adolph Mongo, Mike Reti, Steve Fishman, Nancy Derringer, and last word, as always, to you, Alan Lengel.
Drive home safely.
Excellent. Take care, everybody.